Okay, the recording has started, Jake.
There we go. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for bearing. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everybody, for bearing with us on these technical difficulties as we're still figuring it out. It is only our second meeting, but thank you for bearing with us. And yeah, with that being said, we do have, I like to think, an action-packed meeting here today. We've got our No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge panel. We've got an update on the Nicaraguan elections. PDHC member Dr. Rick Cohn, who presented at our last meeting, actually went to Nicaragua and witnessed the elections firsthand. So he's going to share what he witnessed, what the reaction's been, and then also just some other general updates about what the club's been up to over the last month, some events that we've helped host, some upcoming events that the club has planned. So yeah, we can go ahead and get started with the meeting then. So if we go on to the next slide here with the social media. Thank you, Karen, for making the social media PowerPoint page. And we actually now have a link tree that I wanted to share with everybody. Linktree is basically like one website that you can have like a bunch of links on. So you can just, if you go to that one link, you will have our Facebook, our Instagram, our YouTube, our podcast, how to become a member, everything you could possibly want to know about our club, our website. So that Linktree link is a kind of a good universal thing going forward. So yeah, follow us on our social media, sign up for our email list if you are not already on it. And the next slide here. Yeah, just general info, keeping in mind that we are new clubs. So some of these things may change, but at least right now, our meetings were supposed to be fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. This month or in November, if we had done that, it would have been right near Thanksgiving. So we wanted to push it back a week. And we probably won't end up doing a December meeting just because the same issue, it'll be right around the holidays. So we may just, focus on our outreach events and other club activities for the rest of the year. And then, come out strong in January. And then, if we do decide not to stick with fourth Wednesdays of the month, we will update everybody about when to expect the new meeting times. Again, you can sign up for our email list at hocoprogressives.com. If you want to become a dues paying member so that you can, actually vote on important club issues, the dues structure is it's $36 for a year. For a year-long membership. That are down at the far end. Since it is late in the year, if you become a member now, your membership will last you for all of 2022. So don't think that this would just be a 1 month membership. And then if you want to get a membership that covers you and one other person, you can pay $50. We have a dues waiver if people think that they need it, if they're unable to cover the cost of the dues. You do not have to be a registered Democrat to be a member. And we encourage people to become a members, get on our email list or our internal members only email list and our internal members only event calendar. Be able to have a vote, have a say at the meetings. And if you want to become a member, the way to do that, we have the payment methods on the next slide, I believe. We have a Venmo account. We're trying to move to a different service called Wild Apricot. That's going to be a little bit easier for people to pay, so that you can just go on a website and enter your credit card information. You don't have to have a Venmo account or anything. But in the meantime, until we get that Wild Apricot going, you can pay on Venmo or you can mail. Don't mail cash, just mail a check. I should have taken out the mail cash part, but just mail a check to our PO box. The address is there. If you need any of this information afterwards, feel free to message myself or any of the executive board members. And then in addition to paying the dues, you also have to be voted in by a majority of existing members who show up at a particular meeting. So, and on that subject, I think that is what we have to do right now. I think I might be on the slide, the next slide or slide after that. Is there another slide after that? Yeah, okay. We'll go back to the treasurer's report after this, but I do want to vote in the new members because we do have some new members. So the members, and you don't have to be at a meeting to still be voted in. I know Ken Stevens did pay his dues already, or he emailed the check to pay his dues. He just had not been voted in by us. So we have to vote on his membership. And then also Lori Liskin, who I believe is with us tonight. She just mailed her membership dues check. So we have to vote on her tonight as well. Is there anybody else that is on this call who has, paid dues via check or Venmo? And then maybe I'm just forgetting it, but we could, go ahead and vote them in as a member tonight. Or is it just Ken and Lori? I will assume it is.
I think it's Karen. I don't know of anybody else, but Hiri and I probably have to do some kind of reconciliation eventually. We just haven't gotten together. I need to initiate that with him.
No worries. Okay, well, with no further ado, I say let's get these votes out of the way. I don't expect either of them to be controversial. So we'll and we can vote in the chat as well to make things a little easier. But if so, I motion that we vote on whether to let Ken Stevens be a member or not. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Agree.
Okay. Any discussion? No. Okay. All in favor, either say aye or you can say it in the chat. Aye.
I agree. Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Any nays? And again, there's only existing members who can vote for this part. Only existing dues paying members. Any nays? No. Okay. All right. Well, then Ken Stevens, officially a PDHC member now. Okay. I motion that we vote on whether to let Lori Liskin be a PDHC member or not. Are there any seconds?
I second that.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes. Tell me about Laurie.
Well, why I tell you about Lori when she could tell herself? But
Okay. Let me hear from Laurie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laurie, where are you?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, Harry. Let's see. Tell me about me. In terms of local activism stuff, I am the co-facilitator of the Indivisible Immigration Action Team, and I'm also representing that on the Howard County Coalition for Immigrant Justice. And I've worked with both of those groups to successfully get Calvin Ball to end the ICE contract to house immigrants in our jail.
That's enough. That's enough. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
It's safe to say that this club likely would not exist without the work of Lori Liskin on that ICE contract battle, because that's a big part of the origin story of this club. So if
There are a
there's
lot of other people on this call who were very involved as well.
yes,
Mhm.
yes, it wasn't just Lori, but Lori
No.
did play a big part. So if there's no other discussion around that, all in favor, say aye or write in the chat. Aye.
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 Okay. All opposed, say nay. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Okay. All right. Well, congratulations to Lori and Ken, our two newest PDHC members. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yes, glad to have you. And it looks like Hiri, our treasurer, is still, he for those who don't know, he's got an infant who's probably less than 2 or 3 months old still at this point. So I think he's got
He's on baby duty.
yeah, baby duty, probably cleaning up some baby duty.
I could hear Dina in the background when we were talking earlier. So he was on briefly. He'll be back, Jake. We can circle back for that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, let me make sure that we have all of our panelists on right now. We have Richard, we have Nancy, and we have Kai Hagen. And Kai Hagen, I'm going to let all the panelists introduce themselves, but I want to give a special thank you to Frederick County Council member Kai Hagen, who not only took time out of his county executive campaign to join us, but also took time out of his wife's birthday. So I'm sorry to drag you away from that for a little bit, but we'll try to make this as quick as possible so we can, get you out of that doghouse there. But tell your wife that, special happy birthday from Progressive Democrats of Howard County. But with no further ado, I do want to transition to the panel that we have planned. And this is, in case you didn't see the advertisement for it in the PowerPoint. This is a panel on our recently launched No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge, which if you're on this call, you probably know about it, but it is what it says in the title. We're trying to get candidates in Howard County not to take donations from developers, which we kind of view as like the main corrupting entity, at least when it comes to local politics. So we've been pushing that, and we've actually had we've had good reception from community members, but not the best reception from Howard County candidates, at least. But luckily, we have had some candidates from other jurisdictions show some support. So we wanted to have a panel to speak about, both our No Developer Donation Campaign Pledge, the concept of getting developer money out of politics in general, and the concept of just campaign finance reform in general. So with that in mind, we've got a great panel of 3 speakers. I'm going to each one introduce themselves for a minute or two and explain what their connection to this issue is. But I guess we can first start with Nancy Morgan from American Promise. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and what American Promise is all about?
Sure. I'm in Virginia, your neighbor to the south, but in terms of money and politics, it's like the wild, wild west. I mean, it's just really sort of a crazy, even I'm sure some of you vicariously lived through our recent election, which was the most expensive election in Virginia history. American Promise is unique in the democracy reform space in that it's focusing on a constitutional amendment to allow Congress and the states to regulate election financing, which means basically overturning 40 years of Supreme Court rulings, including Citizens United. But when we started, we looked at Maryland and then we looked at Virginia and we just shook our head and said, we got to look at campaign finance reform. And I guess personally, my background is that I'm an economist. I worked for overseas for the UN for 20 years. I worked on good governance, economic development. And when you look at economic development, it goes good hand in hand with good governance. And so, that's when I came back, and I came back from Tunisia, where they had the Arab Spring, and there was all this wonderful, democracy reform. They had transparent writing their constitution, transparent elections, and then coming back to the US, and it was like, oh my goodness, what has happened to our country? I know you're all aware in 2020, we spent $14 billion on election. Dark money is coming in from both the right and the left. And so we really think that, at least in Virginia, I think that everybody recognizes that things are getting so much out of control that we need legislation. We have no limits. You guys at least have limits. We have no really accountability in terms of independent expenditures. Our legislators can just use their campaign money and spend it on go on a trip to Paris. So we're sort of at the bottom moving up, but I really think that, this is an interesting conversation. The issue on development money, because in Virginia, we're looking at Dominion Energy, which is one of the major donations. So we're interested in looking at how you get people to sign pledges and And certainly incumbents. I mean, maybe new candidates will maybe sign a pledge, but I'm interested in your experiences in getting incumbents to actually sign off and on pledges.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nancy. And that's a good transition to an incumbent who has signed a no developer donation pledge and has a long track record of doing so. So with no further ado, Frederick County Councilmember Kai Hagan, if you could introduce yourself and I guess your connection to the issue.
Okay. Greetings. Thanks for having me. Next door in Frederick County and have been for the last 26 years after moving here from California. I've been doing environmental and social justice work my entire adult life pretty much, and got involved in things in Frederick County as soon as I moved here, which was a reddish county at the time, had a fairly good Republican plurality, worked a lot on environmental and land use issues, and very much with the development issues in our community, and ended up finally being talked into running for county commissioner. Before we had a charter form of government, we had 5 county commissioners that served as the executive and the legislative branch here in Frederick County. Now we have the charter with the county executive and the legislative branch, which is the council. There I won. Development was a big issue, and the 2 of the incumbents who ran again and lost were heavily funded by developers. Heavily is a relative term, though. Elections in Frederick County were relatively less expensive than they are today, and that they are in larger and wealthier counties in Maryland. But essentially, in any community that's experiencing growth and has growth pressures and everything that comes with that, the challenges and the opportunities, developers get involved not only in local policy making, but they've always figured out that it's easier to elect people who want to do what they want them to do than to, struggle against people who are perhaps being more what I would describe as honest brokers, not necessarily anti-development, but not necessarily doing whatever the developers want. And so it's a business investment. We see conservative developers who would never support a certain candidate in a blue county picking, in Montgomery County, it's always going to be a Democrat, right? So they've eventually evolved to having the developer supported Democrats and the non-developer supported Democrats. It's not like they just focus on one party, and it hasn't been a totally partisan divide on that issue in our county. I did serve 4 years on the county commissioners. I decided to run again in 2018 came in first in the primary and in the general election. So you can win when you make a pledge, as I always have, to not accept money from development interest. But I think one of the ways to do that in communities where growth pressures are real and developers invest in those campaigns, in those candidates, they give an advantage to those candidates. And one way to mitigate that advantage a little bit is to be effective at turning that into an issue. I'm not saying, who knows if it mitigates it fully or not, depending on the race, the public attention around development issues, other things like that. But that's publicly available information, but it's not in a form that the average voter is going to see or understand. And in many cases, even if they did, they wouldn't recognize all the names or, the spouse of this developer or these LLCs or things like that. And having third-party individuals and organizations with the ability to communicate that message, people who write letters to the editor, and all sorts of other ways through social media and other things to highlight who are the developer-supported candidates in growing counties where growth issues are a big issue. And frankly, in my experience here and in other parts of the country, I've learned that, in growing communities, growth and land use and planning issues is perhaps the first or second, depending, biggest reason that Republicans will vote for a Democrat in a local election, for example. I got 9,000 more votes than Martin O'Malley did in a year he won in Frederick County. And I think a big part of that was Republicans recognizing that issue and me having developed an identity around land use and planning and caring about that issue enough to cross party lines to vote for me. So, you know, local elected officials can make an instant millionaire with a zoning change. You know, they can pursue smart growth policies and create more transit-oriented or walkable communities with more or less affordable housing and adequate parks and preserving farmland, or they can sprawl all over Kingdom Come, and there's every permutation in between. And we will have, you know, developers, we need them to build our homes and businesses and schools and everything else, and we want them to do a good job, and I don't have any problem with them making a good living, even becoming wealthy off of doing that well. But their interests do not overlap with the public interests, and it's important to have honest brokers and to make that case. And the case is more complicated than simply pointing out who gets money from developers or not, but that is a big factor. It is something that people can't deny, that's right in front of them, that you can put out there. And so finding ways to really gather that information, organize it in a way that's understandable, doing that work that other people are not going to do on their own because they don't have the time or the inclination or know where to find it or recognize all the names, and finding all those different ways to highlight it, the candidate themselves. I don't talk much about the other candidates, but I do highlight the fact that I am the only candidate running for county executive in Frederick County right now, for example, that doesn't solicit and accept money from developers. Some people think not a lot of folks care about that. I think a lot of swing voters and other people do, but you have to find ways to get that message out there effectively. So I don't know how much more, you know, if there's going to be any questions or,
Yeah,
you know, I don't want to take more time than that. So I'll stop there, you know, for now.
Yeah, I'll have some follow-ups once Richard gives his introduction. Then I'm sure maybe the audience might have some things to ask about too. Yeah, so thank you for that, Kai. Now let's hear from one of these, you know, people who's not an incumbent, but somebody who's a young gunner, if I say so myself, and somebody who is trying to, you know, win either an open seat or take down an incumbent by not taking developer donations. So Richard Elliott, running for state delegate in, I believe, District 24, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your connection to the issue.
All right, thank you. I'm in a train station, so excuse any background noise. Hello, everybody. My name is Richard Elliott. I am a candidate for the House of Delegates in District 24, Central Prince George's County, which basically follows MLK Highway from Glendale to Seat Pleasant. I am refusing to take developer money because in Prince George's County politics in particular, developers have been at the core of many of the negative issues in the past. For example, regarding the corruption of Jack Johnson, he was being paid off by developer donations. A lot of the slates, if any of you recall, in 2018, around the time of the Maryland Democratic Party leadership election, one of the major issues of note was the quote unquote official Democratic primary sample ballot. These ballots are predominantly funded by developers. Developer money in Prince George's County has an overwhelming influence. It's basically the largest source of money, and it allows people who've done absolutely no form of campaigning to win extremely large campaigns against candidates who might work their heart out and might raise all the money they can, but just don't stand a chance. I do not believe that people running for office in our county should take developer donations. Personally, I am refusing to take them. I'm not going to speak for any of the other people in the race, but to my knowledge, I am the only candidate in the District 24 race that is choosing to decline donations from not just developers, but also from liquor stores, lobbyists, and police unions.
Yes,
But
well,
I think that's enough.
thank you,
That's enough
Richard.
for my introduction.
And thank you for being the first candidate really to sign our pledge, even if you're not in Howard County, and that's who this was geared to. But I do have a follow-up question that I'd like to ask Kai, though. Richard and Nancy, feel free to jump in with your thoughts as well. But, you know, Kai, as somebody who not only has won by not taking developer money, but, you know, you won, I think in 2008, before like this was like even really cool. 2006, even sooner, before this was, you know, so mainstream. So I want to know, how did you do it, or how are you doing it now? What is your advice to candidates like Richard, or to candidates like Paul Dongera, who's on this call, in Baltimore County, who also just signed our pledge and is running for county council? What is your advice to say this is not a fantasy, this can really happen? You know, we can overcome the developer money.
Well, I mean, it definitely can happen, and it does happen. It's a particularly significant challenge, the more money that's in the race. I mean, Jan Gardner was outspent almost $1 million to about $250,000. I don't know what her exact number was in 2014, and won the race for county executive, because other things mattered a lot to voters, and to $700,000 or 586, depending on how you look at it. But a majority of that vast amount of money that Blaine Young spent in that election was raised from developers, and he still lost. So outspending your opponents and being able to do that because of development money gives you an advantage, but it's not necessarily a decisive one. And it's going to depend on a lot of other issues. And part of it, one of those, is your own identity as a candidate, right? It helped that even before I ran the first time, and I was less well known than I am today, my identity was based on my involvement in land use issues and my columns in the newspaper and my work with a local environmental group. And so I had credibility in talking about those issues, and I could do that effectively. And that's important. It's not enough to just say other people are funded by developers and I'm not. It's important to be able to establish a level of credibility on those issues. And if you don't have the track record of working on the planning commission or this or that, or writing columns in a paper, you have to do it through the quality of your message and being able to speak in ways that convey your level of knowledge and understanding and commitment and sincerity, and not just, you know, I'm not taking money from developers or I'm anti-sprawl. To be able to talk about smart growth and responsible planning in the context of other issues that people care about. How are those connected, right? If we sprawl, it's more expensive. It's harder to keep up with schools. Infrastructure costs more. You know, are we focusing on affordable housing, which is an important issue in our community? You know, developers don't, in most cases, there are some that are involved in affordable housing development, certainly, but generally speaking, what they're looking for is not someone who's working to use the tools of land use and planning to develop more smart growth, mixed use, walkable communities with affordable housing. You can tie that part of your political campaign to an identity that you build credibility by being able to connect it to those other issues and talk about it effectively. But you do have to raise enough money to get your message out. I mean, we can talk about grassroots campaigns and knocking on doors and social media and all the other things, but you know, you still have to be able to raise money. And so you're also talking to donors, right? I'm not taking money from developers, and this is why I can win, and you care about these issues and you need to support me, because you're still going to need to raise money from other sources.
Yeah,
in the world we live in today.
Well, it's good to know, you know, you've done it. You're not the only one who's done it. You know, council member Liz Walsh in my district in Howard County, I think, is another good example of somebody who's done it, and, you know, living proof of examples that if you have a good message and you are willing to put in the time and talk to people in the community, it can be done, though it is not easy. But I want to switch away a little bit from the campaigning side or towards the organizing side. And Nancy, I'd like if you could share a little bit more about what pledge or petition or pledge drives American Promise has done in the past, and, you know, how receptive particularly incumbents have been, and what maybe some of your all's tactics for approaching them have been to get people to sign.
Yeah, and nationally, what we do is we have a Get Money Out of Politics pledge, which we ask candidates to sign. We've had sort of limited success. I mean, I've mentioned before, it's easier to get new candidates who are running and want to position themselves on an issue than to get incumbents who sort of like, well, money is power. And as Kai said, it's sort of not a sexy issue. I mean, people will care about it, but at the end of the day, I think that it's really hard to get incumbents to agree. One of the pledges that a colleague set up, it's called Activate Virginia, is Dominion, because everybody hates Dominion. You know, they overcharge on rates, you know, they're giving money to legislators. It's sort of egregious. And so he had all these candidates actually sign saying you're not going to take money from Dominion. And I think actually it was quite effective, and it resonated with the general public because everybody knew who Dominion was. And I think that's probably like the developer context. I mean, people can, that's tangible. So I think that it really worked. And there was an example of the lieutenant governor who was running Hala Ayala, and she had taken money, she had signed the Activate Virginia, no Dominion money, Clean Virginia gave her money. And all of a sudden she turned around and took 100,000 from Dominion. Oh my goodness, that caused a lot of havoc. But I find, you know, working on a state level, nationally, it's difficult on state level, but I found that the way you can socialize this issue maybe is on a local level. Like you're in Howard County. In Alexandria, Virginia, I was getting the city council to pass a resolution. They did pass a resolution earlier on not taking money out of politics. And this time I had them put something in the legislative agenda saying to support campaign finance, because there are some of our legislators, progressive Democrats, who are reaping in money from Dominion, and then they give it to the party, and then they give it to other candidates. So it's like a money laundering scheme. So I think that on a local level, if you can get these issues socialized in an anti-corruption context, I think that resonates people, you know, whether it's good governance, ethics, disclosure, transparency. If you can get either a local resolution that people buy into, I think then it forces incumbents to pay more attention.
Yeah, and I see Paul Dongera, again, Baltimore County candidate and pledge signer. So I'm going to get to him with his question in a second. But yeah, I think that's really great advice, Nancy. And I think that speaks to what is kind of unique about this issue of getting money out of politics, getting developer money out of politics, is the or what I think should be universal appeal of, like, whether you're right wing or left wing, Republican or Democrat, nobody in theory should want their politicians to be corrupt. So I think that's where some of that bipartisan support that Kai talks about earlier is they're willing to overlook disagreements on other issues if they know, well, at least he's honest, at least he's not taking money. But yeah, Paul, I see you have your hand. And also I meant to say in the chat, you know, if you got any questions, feel free to ask them. But for some reason, I can't talk to everyone in the chat. But yeah, so as a backup, feel free to also raise your hand with the Zoom feature like Paul did.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
Doing well.
Good. Kai, thank you so much for coming to the meeting tonight. It's actually inspired me quite a bit. This is my family's third kind of non-development or not taking money from developers campaign. And in this campaign, you know, it's really important for me to articulate what I think is the most powerful reason about why it's important for me anyway not to take development money. And that is, and Kai mentioned this, is that we do need developers to do things. And he also mentioned smart growth. I'm reading a book right now called Strong Towns. I'd really recommend it to everybody. And it's essentially lays out an argument about how we've come to this sprawl development model and exactly what's so dangerous about it. And I've been, you know, educating the voters that I'm talking to about, you know, this new development. Well, that the development builds the tax base, but it's also building future infrastructure liability that is not sustainable. And when we're talking about sustainability, it's not just environmental sustainability, but financial sustainability. And indeed, what we need to start doing is we need to start kind of densing up our kind of, town centers to kind of cost average down this infrastructure a little bit. And unfortunately, so many people are indeed against development. Yet, I think it's a powerful argument to say, like, look, this is why I'm supporting this project. This is why it's good. This is why it's going to help fund essential services that we all rely on. This is how it's actually going to improve the environment and improve bikeability and walkability, so on and so forth. So to me, it's not just a marketing, banner that I'm waving, which I am waving the marketing banner, but if I win this thing, I want to be able to use this kind of this authority, just this perception of being the honest broker. I think that was a great characterization of what I'm trying to be, of educating people about development issues, land use issues, and why they're important to their lives. So thanks for having me, Jake.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. And, we continue to wish you luck in your race.
Question, Paul, where are you running?
I'm running in District 1, which is District 1 is a little bit north of Securities Boulevard, Woodlawn Precinct, Dogwood Elementary, and Chadwick Elementary are our northernmost precincts.
And you're running for what, county council?
I'm running for county council, yes, sir.
Baltimore County.
I know it very well. I retired from the plantation. I know the area very well.
Yeah. And so, and things are so bad in Baltimore County that the planning board, we have in Baltimore County a concept that's called the URDL line. It stands for the Urban Rural Demarcation Line. It was a smart growth tool that was created in the 70s to kind of have the development between the city and the URDL line, and then outside the URDL line was going to be, more agricultural, less intensive zoning. Well, they've developed so much inside of the URDL line that now they're talking about actually moving the URDL line out just to keep this whole thing going.
Is that the subway?
What's that? They actually did move the URDL line over by what was going to be the terminus of the Red Line over there in the Woodlawn area. And it was also in an effort to attract the Social Security's data processing center that wound up going to Urbana, and we didn't get it. But of course, once they moved the URDL line out, they didn't move it back in. Then the upzoning starts through the land use attorneys and their wives and the LLCs that they create. And
You say they. Who is they? I thought it was the Republican governor that did support the effort, and therefore it failed.
Oh, are you talking about the Red Line?
I'm talking about the subway that was supposed to be built, east and west?
He's talking Red Line, I think.
Yeah. So the Red Line was canceled by the Governor Hogan. Yeah. I'm talking about that when the Red Line was being planned, okay, they moved this philosophical line that was created to foster smart growth development in the inner tier suburbs of everything. But when the Red Line failed, not when it failed, when the governor, vetoed it, they didn't move this URDL line back in. They didn't revert to the natural, more low density zoning of this parcel.
Okay, question. The federal government came up with the money and the Republican governor vetoed it.
Yeah.
Okay, now my question to you as county council member on Baltimore County, what can you do to make that happen? Or is that a plan of yours? What are you planning to do about bringing those jobs and bringing that transportation that's needed in that community?
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with that community.
Yeah. Well, Harry, you know, one of my big things is that in Southwest Baltimore County, we have 3 mass transit stops. We have 2 MARC train stations and 1 light rail station down in Baltimore Highlands, that through land use, we have the ability to do smart growth, high density, mixed use development there. Hold on, I've got to take this, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Paul. We wish you luck. But to bring it back to the 3 plan panelists, so we appreciate Paul's input. But he honestly kind of answered the question in his context that I was going to ask next, and that is, I'd like to hear from Kai and Richard and Nancy, if you can speak to this in Virginia as well. You know, definitely go for it. But if Richard and Kai could maybe speak to some of the specific negative impacts that they've seen developer corruption or developer influence in the form of these, contributions, some negative impacts that it has had in your community. Because I can speak for Howard County. The high school I went to, Howard High School, was at 140% capacity, and there's even more portable classrooms now than there were when I was in high school. And we've seen the old Ellicott City flooding and what that it was a result of. But I'm curious to hear from the neighboring counties, what has been the harm done there.
So in Prince George's, absolutely the school overcrowding. The school that I attended was at, I would say, probably on average about 30 students per classroom when I attended. And now it's even more than that. And we have not built new schools in Prince George's County since the mid 2000s. And then even the effort now to propose building new schools is the first effort in American history to do a P3 for public school construction. Another effort that is being supported by developers and by developer-supported candidates on the Prince George's County Board of Education. The Board of Education is a predominant example of developer influence with candidates such as Pamela Boozer-Strother and Sonia Williams, who have been elected with developer money for the explicit purpose of things like keeping police in schools, preventing schools from being built with public bond issuance, things like that. So school overcrowding is a predominant issue. We have the highest property taxes in the state in Prince George's County, I believe, or the second highest in the state. So we have a large amount of money that is coming. I mean, relatively speaking to other areas, we have money that's coming out of the pockets of constituents and that is not being seen in good governmental services either. So it makes it even harder to convince people that it's possible to do good things. But then finally, the developers propose in Prince George's County, again, with the strange rules, note that all of the development in the entire county, excluding the city of Laurel, is done by the county council. I am running for the House of Delegates. My individual position, I don't have a power over zoning. However, some of the legislation I plan to bring to the next governor will be, for example, allowing regional controlling of zoning in Prince George's County so that mayors, city council members, and constituents have an actual opportunity to have development where they want it. Going back to what Kai said before, while in my particular area where we've been overdeveloping for years, I'm a very much environmental preservationist. There's other areas in the district where there's burned down buildings, vacants, things that can be developed into things of building, like things of utility for the community, which are things that people have been asking for. That's where we need to try and get the developers to places where there's blight and nuisance that constituents want it gone, so they can address it, not cutting down forests around children and families. So that's a few of the things we've seen. Oh, sorry, Harry, you had a question?
No, I was going to make a statement, but you go ahead and finish. I'm sorry.
No, that was it.
I was just going to say that I think now Howard County has the highest tax rate in the state presently. When I first moved there 35 years ago, Howard County was near the bottom. And we kept electing, the electorate kept electing corporate Democrats and conservative Democrats who just continued to give away everything to the developers for nickels and dimes and contributions.
Yeah.
No, and that's majorly the case in Prince George's as well. For example, the sitting county executive, Angela Alsobrooks, was quoted in an early article as being, quote, like Mike Miller's favorite county executive yet, just as an example. So in my county, developers largely fund not just the county executive, but also candidates for delegate, candidates for senator, candidates for county council, but also the slates that they use in order to get elected. But that concludes my point. I'm going to let Kai go because I've been talking long enough.
Hey, Jake, before Kai goes, Joel had his hand up, so I don't know if Joel had a question.
Okay. Joel, is it all right if you hold the question until Kai gives his answer for how the developer corruption has, impacted Frederick County? Unless there's a quick question you can ask now, but.
I mean, I'd be careful about using the word corruption. I think it does corrupt the process in some way, but I think of corruption as sort of a legal matter, and giving, fully disclosed campaign contributions to people is not inherently corrupt. We need campaign finance reform. We need, I think, to change the ability for such interests to make such large contributions. The state has moved in that direction to some degree in recent times. For example, making it harder for a developer to give the maximum through multiple LLCs and things like that. But to specifically speak to the question, I could give plenty of individual examples of a poorly planned or ill-advised development that's had some kind of environmental impact or contributed to overcrowded schools or something like that. But I would make instead the broader point that, planning is complicated, and when you have, and there are a lot of myths and preconceived notions out there about what's good or what's not good. And sometimes a lot of the people who are concerned about overdevelopment or sprawl are not necessarily that well educated about smart growth principles, and they oppose density or think that density is, a bad thing, without understanding that, a mix of housing types and an appropriate level of density and communities that are where it's well designed provides for more affordable housing and walkable communities and cheaper infrastructure and lower cost, more efficient public services, and all of the other things that come with that. And it takes leadership that can really make that case. And one of the things I've been able to do in Frederick County is because I've been a good bridge on that issue, but it's still always a challenge to get people to understand that Frederick County is going to experience growth. And so, we can't just have a debate about whether or not, we're going faster or slower. That's like hitting your gas and then the brake and the gas and the brake, instead of having a conversation about whether you're even on the right road, and you need people to be able to do that, and it's complex, but it's important. And in recent years, there's a lot more information out there, a lot more models of communities that have successfully implemented various smart growth approaches, and sometimes they're in conservative places like Utah and stuff like that can serve as working models. And that's helping to make it easier as people learn more, planners learn more, people see the impact on a cost. The reference earlier to Strong Towns, which is an organization that I strongly encourage people to find out more about, read, to like their Facebook page, read some of their stuff, their blog, provides a lot of really good and useful information about that. So I would say that the single biggest way in which their involvement has been a negative impact is that they're pursuing whatever they can, wherever they can, and if it means getting a rezoning, they're not necessarily, they have a short-term business model, right? They're not looking at what's the long-term impact or smart growth principles. It's like, if we can get zoning or have zoning on this property, and what's the, the most profitable development that we can put there, that's what they're going to do. That's their goal. And that's okay if you have an honest system that's providing the kind of honest brokering with a broader comprehensive plan and approach to land use and planning that can say, yeah, but that's not what we have in mind, with some meaning and some impact and that takes having enough elected officials of the right elected officials to do that. So I'd say again, the biggest negative impact is that communities that have an outsized influence of developers on policy making and in elections end up being that much less likely or highly unlikely to make the kind of smart land use planning and development choices as they grow that make an impact on everything you care about in your community: open space, parks, schools, taxes, you name it. Get away from this notion that just building new houses means more tax base, more tax revenue. It doesn't work that way. That it may mean more tax base and more tax revenue, but that's not the proper equation, and we've got to be more sophisticated about the arguments that we make.
Well, thank you for that thorough answer, Kai. And the reason I ask about, what is the effect it's having in Frederick and Prince George's and Baltimore County is because every time I hear people describe it, I think, wow, that sounds exactly like Howard County. So, I want to sort
of a lot of the similar dynamics at play. I mean, communities are not as unique as they think they are. We're, just like ecosystems aren't. They might be in slightly different regions, slightly different trees that are dominant, but they're of the same, following the same basic processes and laws of nature, as it were. And communities going through land use and development with all the same mix of people and business interests are going to experience this same arc, if they don't find ways to, make that shift.
If I may give
Hey, Jake. Go ahead, Nancy.
may I give an example from Virginia, and it's a different that damage that came out of the Alexandria election were a separate jurisdiction. And so one of the big issues was for city council and mayor was overdevelopment and lack of planning in terms of flood mitigation and traffic flows and stuff like that. And then everybody was really angry because of the influence of, we feel like it's influence of developers. But I don't know, I think it's like Kai, it's so complex, developing sustainable development in communities. But I think what happens, and this is the most dangerous impact to our democracy, it raises people's feelings like there is corruption, even though there might not be corruption. People are, so then the question comes up, like, what is the solution? And I like, then you can do pledges, or you can actually have transparency in campaign finance, where they're getting their money, having better ethics reform and disclosure and stuff like that. So I do think, it's development is so complicated, but the danger to us all is when we get fed up and we say our legislators are being bought off. Then the question is, what do we do about it to get transparency and get people to realize, legislators to say, yeah, we need to be more transparent, and what do they need to provide the public to assure them that they're not favoring development over the citizens of a jurisdiction.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nancy, for sharing the Virginia perspective. Again, doesn't sound too different from what we're seeing in Maryland. But Joel, I know you've had your hand up for a little bit now. I'm sorry to make you wait, but you had a question or comment?
Good evening, guests. I'm also trying to listen to the apropos to the zoning board on Hickory Ridge going on at the same time. My questions for Councilman Hagan. I'm the one who sent you the emails on the EV parking bill, and perhaps sometime I can talk to you about that. But while I was researching that and watching some of your meetings, I saw how little work Frederick County had compared to Howard County. You're on bill number 12. Howard County is considering bill 89. They have 166 resolutions this year. So to the discussion that some of the other people mentioned about schools and other things, I realized that a lot of the issues seem to be sucked up by the municipalities in Frederick County that Howard County has none of. So how much of the, besides Frederick City, do the 11 other municipalities have planning and land use control, or does the county do that for them? So how many of the issues, particularly in the city of Frederick, affecting schools and development, the county council really has no control over?
sorry, I was muted. No, that's right. It makes a big difference. I mean, we have counties that have no municipalities and counties that have a few. Montgomery County has large population centers that are not in it, that are towns in essence, but are not incorporated municipalities, and others that are, you know, Rockville, Gatesburg, et cetera. But Bethesda's not, right? So all the zoning is done by the council. Frederick has more municipalities than any other county, and the largest is Frederick, which is the second largest city in Maryland, believe it or not, and just ahead of Rockville and growing. All 12 municipalities completely control their own land use and planning. They all can annex land, for example, without the counties agreeing or support or whatever. I mean, you can delay it a little if you really wanted to, or you had a strong objection if there was a difference in the zoning and things like that for a few years, but that's it. So I think it's really important to work well with our municipalities in terms of countywide comprehensive planning, to have a strong relationship, to build a common vision, to work with the elected officials in the city on these issues the same as you would with at the county, because of their ability to annex it, because they are just plan within the scope of the existing city boundary where a lot of people live and it affects their lives. But except for Frederick, all our other municipalities are much smaller. And so they don't have significant sophisticated planning staffs. They might have one person or a part-time person and limited resources. And I think it's incumbent upon the county, and this is part of my goal as a county executive if I win, is to really strengthen that relationship, not by wielding the access to resources as a kind of leverage over their own decision-making authority, but as a way to work better together, plan better together, share information, and look at the long-term interests of those individual communities in the county as a whole by utilizing the resources that the county does have. And I would make those resources larger in terms of planning staff, but in terms of mapping and data and expertise and experience and just staff size and everything else, the county has so many more resources than those municipalities. And the smaller the jurisdiction, individual municipalities, the more developers can have an outsized influence. Municipal elections have notoriously small turnouts. They have very low cost campaigns, and a little bit of money can make a big difference. So it's important to be involved at that level as well.
Well, thank you for that, Kai. And it is 8 o'clock. If you had to get going, completely understand. Again, it's his wife's birthday, so we appreciate him being here.
We're having a late dinner tonight because of this. I've got to go make dinner. So I am available if anybody wants to reach out to me. KaiHagen@gmail.com is a real easy email to remember. I wish good luck to the other candidates, Paul, Richard, anyone else who's here and running for office. I hope that you have success, and if you need any advice about how to talk about some of these issues and a way that helps convey the distinctions that matter, I'd be happy to spend time talking about those with you. But good luck to all of you, and thank you, Jake and your folks, for caring enough about this issue to spend some time focusing on it. And I just hope that in the end you have some people who sign the pledge and the ability to get that information about developer support and contributions, and who's not accepting them out there in a meaningful way. Good luck to all of you.
Well, thank you, Kai. Thank you for joining us. We wish you luck, and tell your wife we said happy birthday and sorry.
Thank you. It's also my son's 30th birthday today too. So
wow,
yeah.
Look at that.
All right.
Hey, less days for you to remember, but yeah, take care. But I see Kat and Harry still have their hands up, so I'm sorry if you had a question specifically towards Kai, but maybe Richard and Nancy could still speak to whatever you had to say or ask. So Kat, if you wanted to.
Actually, my question is for Richard, so it's fine.
Okay.
I have a question about PG County and its problems that you just discussed. And I'm wondering how you believe, since you're endorsing him, that Peter Franchot is going to solve those problems for Prince George's County.
Okay, and I like this question, although I wish you had asked before Kai had left, because in full transparency, Kai had originally endorsed Franchot and has actually de-endorsed him. But to explain my gubernatorial choice, no, it's cool. I'll explain my gubernatorial choice gladly. So in my county, as I've explained, the predominant individual of power is the county executive, Angela Alsobrooks. Under the current regulations that were just changed last year, candidates can get, sorry, I'm going to cover that light because it's really bright. Candidates can take money from developers again. For candidates for county council, we're not allowed to take money from developers in areas where they had pending projects. That was a law that was on the books. It was very recently changed. That is one rule change that I think Franchot will be more amenable to than, for example, I think Westmore or Tom Perez or Rashawn Baker in particular. So there's that. There's also the concern for the regional zoning authority, because Franchot has the support of several mayors in my county, including the mayors of the largest towns in my personal district, those being Glenarden and Seat Pleasant. They have the support of Franchot. That's an issue that I think is of utmost importance for the preservation of the environment in Prince George's County, is pushing for local zoning authority. And I think that Franchot is indeed a good faith partner on that particular aspect. But I fully accept any criticism and questioning of my candidate I'm choosing. And I don't think any of the candidates are all that great in the grand scheme of things.
I'm just wondering where Franchot gets his money, because he had the best brochure I've ever seen.
I don't think the development, because in Prince George's at least, and this is again a reason that makes me sway more towards him, is that Rashawn Baker, who is widely supported by the developers, the apartment complex owners during his run for office. Rashawn Baker has signs up at all of the commercial developments in the county, the Vista Gardens, and in the properties such as that. I don't think that state developers are supporting Franchot. Personally, I don't think that they are. But when the first finance report comes out, I would actually be delighted for your organization to put out, like how much money each candidate had taken from developers, related entities, LLCs, etc. And I'm curious how it would scale out. I'm very curious how it scale out. I'm thinking personally that Rashawn Baker is basically the candidate of the Prince George's specific developers. Because remember that the people who are the developers in Baltimore County, Howard County, etc., they often don't even try to get contracts, in development in our area in the first place. So it's a really odd battle, but given
I think Rashawn's
very,
probably a terrible candidate. I would agree with you there.
Yeah, Rashawn
But
is a
I also
terrible
think Peter
candidate.
Franchot is probably equally as bad. But I understand your reasoning anyway.
Yeah. And I'll say again for quick summary, given that Franchot has very little support in the legislature and will be heavily dependent on the legislature to enact large parts of his agenda, with one of those parts being environmental preservation, and having, I think maybe 4 or so endorsements, 4 or 5, maybe 6 endorsements in the legislature, I would have I think a relatively large ability to sway his agenda. And I think that he provides a check on the county executive in the same ways that in particular ways, Hogan has been a matter of accountability over County Executive Alsobrooks. That's not to defend or praise Hogan, just to defend how some of my allies have used Hogan as a cudgel against Angela Alsobrooks in benefit of the students and teachers of Prince George's County.
Well, thank you for that that back and forth. I hope people who are undecided about the governor's race found that interesting. Harry, you have a.
I have a comment. I have a comment. A comment I'd like to make in regards to corruption, guilty of dishonest practices as bribery, lacking integrity. I believe that you can be corrupt, and I believe that all these county executives are corrupt, and they can be so designated because they have been repeating their practices for years, 10, 20, 30 years, of ignoring the various community groups the various community organizations who have said no to development, and they have just gone ahead and voted it in. So
Yeah.
the term, I was disappointed to hear the gentleman from what was he from? PG County, Frederick from Frederick, who said you because it's not illegal, that means you're not corrupt. Well, that's not true. You can still be corrupt. Even you can be legally corrupt. And I would designate these folks, these county executives and county council people who the developer knows and the community really knows that they have what they want before they receive it legally through the process.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that point. That's all.
Well, thank you. And I think he was speaking to the legal standard to prove in a court of law that corruption took place. Maybe he's saying
what you have to do is challenge. To make that happen, you have to challenge what has occurred. Okay, sort of like what you're doing with the lady in 3, the councilwoman in 3. You have to prove to the court. Otherwise, you're going to be ignored.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to fight for these things. You have to fight for these changes. Nobody's going to give you anything.
Yeah. No. Well said. And for those who don't know, Harry is running for county executive here in Howard County, and I expect to hopefully at some point sign our pledge down the road. Maybe the first Howard County candidate.
I thought I had signed it already. Well, if I haven't, I will sign it again. Okay.
I'll send it to you on the
Yeah, send it to me. Yeah, that's no problem there.
Cool. Good to know. But yeah, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up the panel. I don't know if Nancy and Richard had, any last closing comments or plugs, shout outs they wanted to give before they go.
Yeah,
Anyone?
Go ahead, Nancy. Go.
I have a closing comment just saying, and I think Harry had an important point, saying what is important is the court of public opinion.
Yes.
And that's the challenge of getting everybody to sign these pledges. And that's what we don't do very well. Journalists are your friends. The media is your friend. If somebody signs a pledge, send something to a local newspaper that has information about how much money is coming from developers for other candidates. I think, because otherwise just having the pledge, it doesn't really go anywhere. That's where the messaging is so important. And Harry has it right. It's a perception, it's a corruption issue, and in the court of public opinion, that matters.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat, did you have another comment before we wrapped up the panel, or before Richard said his?
I just want to have one more comment real quick about Peter Franchot that I think I need people to remind people of. This was the guy who did not support Ben Jealous when he ran for governor. Instead, as a Democrat, went and supported Larry Hogan. Please keep that in mind when you go to support someone. This was the guy who left us with that lame duck, Larry Hogan. And I will not forget that about Franchot.
Yeah, well, thank you for the Franchot. It would be nice to have Ben Jealous right now, that's for sure. But Richard, if you want to close out the panel here. He might not be available. Maybe his train came. But we appreciate having Richard and Nancy on. If you all want to stay for the last 15 or 20 minutes of the meeting, you're welcome to. I would not blame you at all, especially Nancy being in another state, if you all don't want to stick around. But
thanks so much, Jake. Appreciated the opportunity.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jake.
Yep. Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks. Nice meeting everybody.
And Paul, I'd seen that you had your hand up earlier, and then you took, I don't know if you were trying to finish the comments that you were saying earlier when you got the call.
I just didn't weigh in on, the like what is going on with the developer influence in Baltimore County. And I think Kai mentioned it a little bit, but, it's just the distrust that everybody has. It's very, very harmful. one of our communities, a town called Arbutus, they had they just received a sustainable community designation. And it was very interesting to see like what they wanted. They wanted better shops. They wanted more open space. They wanted to improve the water quality of the stream. They wanted to improve flood resiliency and so on and so forth. But what they did not want was they did not want new development. And oddly enough, by redeveloping their main street and putting in stormwater management and kind of creating public open spaces, you know, using smart growth techniques, can give them what they want, but we need to use development to do that, to do it. And again, it's with the destructive force has been of decades of car-driven infill development that has hurt communities, has turned people off to any development, and that's a very dangerous thing. So I'm going to say it again. I was glad to hear that Kai backed me up on it. Everybody go look at strongtowns.org. They have great content, great stuff for you to look at. And if you care about development, if you care about the environment, if you care about sustainability, you have to go check out strongtowns.org. So thanks for having me, Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And I think Megan has her hand up now.
She does.
Yep.
Richard, did you want a chance to close out before I say anything?
Oh yeah.
See there?
Maybe
I was just going to quickly say that that the pledge that we are doing does not really say anything about the business of development. It really is just trying to unentwine developer influence in our political system. So we're just trying to separate those two out so that, you know, everybody is on an even playing field, particularly the constituents, because right now we're just getting bulldozed.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because, and I hear it all the time, people will come to me and phrase to me what they think my position is, and they'll say, oh, you're anti-development. And no, that is not what we are. We're not anti-development. We're pro smart development, smart growth. We're for development that makes sense in an area that can accommodate it and has the infrastructure to build it and has the appropriate affordable housing and isn't in a place that's going to cause flooding. But they try to straw man having that pretty reasonable take as being anti-development. And that's just not the case. We're not out here trying to villainize. We just think decisions should be made on the merits and not because a developer donated the $1,000 to you. So yes, well, thank you. Everybody, I think that was a great discussion. Before we close out the meeting, we're just going to give a couple other updates of things, you know, while this campaign finance reform with the developers is probably our main thing we do, you know, work on other things as well. One of those things is we try to keep an international focus as well, even though, you know, you probably have the most ability to create change in your own community. We shouldn't forget about the really horrible things that our country is responsible for abroad. So we do have an International Solidarity Committee. We have Dr. Richard Cohn with us, who is on the International Solidarity Committee, and he's going to speak a little bit about Nicaragua. Just if you were at our first meeting, you know, they just had elections recently, and Rick actually went to Nicaragua during these elections and kind of witnessed firsthand how it all works. So Rick's going to talk to us for a couple minutes about what he saw when he was there, what the election process was like, and how the elections ended, and what has sort of the Western U.S. reaction towards this been. So, Rick, if you're there, I'm sorry, I know.
Yeah, I'm here.
A long time. Thanks.
And yeah, I wanted to share this this slide just to show you what it looked like in the room, or in the 13,500 rooms. where about 200 people voted. So this guy's signing in. I mean, in each room, 200 people voted on average. This guy is signing in, and
Are we seeing his screen right now? You're trying to show your screen, Rick?
I'm trying to show it. Yeah, it says.
Yeah, let me stop sharing. Let me stop sharing. So
Oh, okay, yours.
because
is-
I was sharing the present. There we go. Now he's sharing. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I thought it would just cover yours up.
No, it didn't.
Never mind.
It's okay. It's
Okay. So in this room, what you see are three people sitting down. They have the armbands that say CSE, which stands for the fourth branch of government. That is the electoral council. And four people behind them are all from different political parties as a party observers. And so every time someone came in to vote, they had at least 3 observers and three poll workers helping, and a person at the door called the police, but they weren't like, our police. They weren't armed or anything. They had hand sanitizer. That was about it. But they just made sure the room didn't get too full, helped the handicapped, things like that. So, these people or their representatives are there the whole time. At the end of the day, they count the votes in the room. They don't move the votes. So you don't have where you see elections where ballots get stuffed in the box and transported and lost and whatever, and then all put in one place. So you count, 1 million ballots in one spot. Remember, think about Florida, the mess that we had. You don't have that. You have just a couple hundred votes in a room, and they don't leave the room till they're counted and separated and put in. They only had to vote for 4 contests. So it was for National Assembly, Central American Parliament, and President, Vice President. It's a parliamentary system, so you only vote for party. You don't vote for candidates. So there'll be up to 20 candidates for each party, but if you get 4% of the vote, you get your first candidate in. If you get 8%, you get your second candidate in, and so forth. So there's lots of representation, even if you don't have a big win. There were 6 political parties for president, 7 for National Assembly, or coalitions of parties. There were actually 14 parties. When the voter comes in, they sign, the poll worker who's sitting right in front of him signs the ballot, stamps it, and then hands him the ballot, shows him how to vote, basically explains it in whichever language they speak. And they go and they take that to the voting booth, mark it, put it in the box. So it's a very simple system. And yet there are so many checks and balances. Everybody has a government issued photo ID. And then at the end, they ink your thumb, and the ink stays on for 4 days in case you are able to steal someone else's ID and they look like you and they don't vote. And nobody recognizes you because it's all your community that's actually in there watching you. So all of those things, you couldn't vote twice because you'd still have this ink on your thumb. So, it's so many controls. And we could see how many people were coming through. We saw that, the turnout seemed to be, in a lot of turnout in the morning. So we'd see, well, that's like 40 people in an hour. For the first couple of hours, that's 80 people. Some cases they said up to 40% of the eligible voters had voted by 10 a.m. So it was heavy in the morning. So we saw how many people were voting. But what happened is the US press, this is just an example, completely misrepresented what happened. Now, first of all, you couldn't cheat, right? And so what happened is the Sandinista party won about 75%, 65% of people voted. Notice here it says, they put in an estimate that the actual eligible voters turning out to vote was 18.5%. Okay, basically the people we saw in 45 minutes were 18.5%. So we know that number is absolutely no truth to that. They had all these other things that they claim happened that we didn't see any of. Militants. Okay, so I have a picture here of one of the police, that one of the militants intimidating people as they enter the polling place, with the infamous, hand sanitizer. this is one of the police, right? This
woman there in the white shirt is police.
Yes, yeah, she's a police. So yeah, half the police are women in Nicaragua. So are half the. One of the things they do with their parliamentary system is to be on the ballot. Your party has to list candidates alternating male and female. So once the election's over, half the winning candidates are going to be female, half are going to be male. So it's 50-50. And it's true of every office. So if the president and all of the presidential candidates were men, all of the vice presidential candidates were women, because they chose to do it that way. They could have had a female president and a male vice president, but those are the rules. So very interesting, interesting system, gender parity throughout the whole government, but then it ends up applying to everything. So they're actually one of the most gender parity, highest gender, according to the United Nations, one of the highest gender parity in the world. But these things that were in the press, they were completely false. And there was no mainstream press in Nicaragua. There were 37 people, well, 36 people from the US. There were 76 international press there. And I didn't read every single story in every language, but I did read most of what the Americans said, at least, and some of the Spanish. And I didn't see anybody that was actually there claiming any of these things that were in all of the national US press and, you know, the international press that did not attend. And it really makes you think. And I have to say, like, if you think you read something and see something on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or the LA Times or New York Times, you think that it's true, that it's, you know, it's just not. When we, you know, just like that 18.5 number and the fact, then they said that, oh, the Sandinistas stuffed the ballot. They put in all their own ballots and made it look like they won. How would you do that in this system where everybody from all parties, so there were only 6 people in that room, but they only count 200 votes. You have to repeat that tens of thousands of times throughout the country and not have a single person, you know, give out the secret that we stuffed the ballots, right? You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. It was so secure. And yet they claim, you know, in the mainstream press that, oh yeah, it was completely fraudulent. The other thing that they've been saying is that Ortega, the New York Times said there was only one candidate on the ballot, which obviously wasn't true. But they also said that he arrested all of his opponents. And there were some people who were arrested, and it was very smart of them to do so, because these are people who were channeling money to opposition groups to riot in 2018. And they pardoned them and let them all out of jail from that. And then they were doing it again to try to disrupt the election. And so they interrupted that and they arrested them. But none of the people who were arrested were candidates. According to the US press, he arrested all of his opposition. Well, none of them were candidates. None of the political, as I said, 14 political parties, none of them endorsed any of these people. You know, they weren't running. They didn't even register with any of these political parties. Okay, so they weren't even members of the party, let alone candidates. So, you know, so then they started calling them pre-candidates or people who could have been candidates or hopefuls. You know, well, I'm a presidential candidate, a potential presidential candidate, just like almost all of us are, right? I'm eligible to run for president. So if I'm arrested, then you're arresting a presidential candidate, let alone all of the people who actually were arrested from the January 6th protests. That was a little more similar to what these people were, you know. So that I take any questions, I can stop sharing. But if anybody has any comments. So I didn't know my video wasn't on. Jake, I think you're muted.
Oh, hello? You can't hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, sorry about that. My question is, how did you first, because I know you've been going to Nicaragua for a long time. So how did you first get involved with these trips and building that relationship with Nicaragua? Yeah, the first time was actually in the 1980s. I worked there for a year. But I've been there. We went back on vacation in 2017, and then I decided to start trying to get a study abroad course
together. And so I started studying agroecology there, which is one of the many things that they do much better. It's a different philosophy. It's a completely different paradigm than the United States. It's in the United States, it's a discipline about how do you make agriculture that's, you know, economically competitive and based on capitalism, but maybe is just a little less harmful to the environment. Is there a way we can profit from, and, you know, like the whole idea of green technology making money, right? Making big companies more money. There, they actually have a lot of different priorities besides the profit motive, and they live it. You know, it's a little hard to get your head around. You know, the idea that big companies don't run everything. And people decide that, no, I want agriculture that has social value, and so forth. So I started working on that, and then I got invited to come and what they called accompany the election, or sort of be there for the election.
Hey, Jake, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you
You're
still
too
not
far-
hear me?
Now you're just too far away from the microphone.
Sorry about that. But yeah, no, I mean, I saw you were there. You're talking to the press that was there. So, you know, good on you, and thank you for, you know, reporting it on social media, reporting it to us so that we can get this perspective of somebody who was there that is really not being shown in the Western media right now.
And the one thing to think about as a local issue is that, you know, they have healthcare, they have national healthcare, great healthcare, nice new hospitals. They have free college tuition. Do these issues sound familiar? Guess what? The same companies that don't want us to have that here, they don't want them to have that there. You know, it's the same struggle. And yet they're a little ahead of us. So we can learn from them. How did they do it?
Yeah, and I'm curious, you probably don't know this off the top of your head, but like, you know, you talk the problem with our agriculture is the profit motive, and to tie it back to the panel, the problem with our housing is that it's a profit-based model. So I'm curious how Nicaragua does housing, if, you know, if they have the same developer issue.
No, actually, the government builds the houses, a lot of the houses. So for and that's a very different model, and very interesting model. They don't, so they aren't about, what we do is we give Section 8 funding, right? We basically give money to people who own the buildings to rent to people. What they do is they build them a house and they sell it to them at like $10 a month until it's paid off at like $2,000. And that's their subsidized housing. It's housing that is actually given to them, and that's property that they keep and own forever. So again, it's looking at the whole idea of capitalism and looking at where capital is, not so much from that top down, but very decentralized way of like letting people have ownership of their own property, their own home, and their own businesses to give them that freedom.
Well, thank you. And, you know, Patrick Gastiga, I don't know if you're still there, but, you know, this is what type of club that we are, you know, just Patrick from the Party for Socialism and Liberation, who met today at the Rich Gibson state's attorney thing. So, you know, probably maybe different from what you hear at a lot of Democratic clubs. But, you know, we like it that way. But thank you, Rick. If there's no other comments or questions, there are a couple other things I really want to quickly speed us through before I wrap us up. I'm sorry that we're staying.
Thank you. That's great.
But yeah, thank you, Rick. And yeah, hopefully we can hear from the International Solidarity Committee about, you know, if there's another update with Nicaragua or some other, you know, country. There's always a lot going on. But yeah, well, thank you, Rick.
Alrighty, thanks.
Karen, if you could, yeah, thank you. Right on the gun there. But yeah, basically now I just have a couple like upcoming events that we want to promote, so it shouldn't take won't keep us on here too much longer, but I appreciate
I was trying to do a full screen share, Jake, so hang on one second. I'll try to do that again so that you can see it better.
No worries.
Hold on a second. I'm hitting the wrong buttons.
No worries.
Here we go. Okay.
But yeah, I appreciate the loyal. Yep. Okay, cool. There we go. So want to promote 3 upcoming, and again, I said at the top of the meeting, there's a good chance
Jake, what happened to you? We lost you.
December just because it would fall. You still can't hear me?
I can hear
Hello?
you, but you're coming in and you're breaking up.
Oh, okay. Well, Karen, would you maybe be able to present the outreach events real quick? Because I know you're on the outreach committee and we all help create these. So you wanna
Yeah. So this coming a week from this Sunday, right? This Sunday is I got to keep my dates straight.
Yep.
So this upcoming Sunday, we're going to be at the Elk Ridge Public Library, and we're going to do a tabling event. And I am excited because I bought the club. I'm going to call it a Christmas present, but whatever you celebrate, it's a Christmas present, or it can be a Hanukkah present, however you want to say it. But I got some postcards that have our logo on them, and on the back, I've got the QR code for the link tree that Francis created for all of us. So we'll have those to hand out, and I got us a couple. They're signs, really. They're signs that we could sit on the table also that also have the QR code on them, which is kind of neat. So we'll look a little bit more polished this time. It's a great thing to come out to. The last time I thought it was pretty successful. Liz Bobo came out and we got pictures with her. She was really excited. And since then, Jenny Thomas, some of the I want to call them not legends, but some of the original people from back in the day when I was a little kid, they were on the county council. So anyway, so come out. We want as many people to come out for that as possible. And then the 11th, Kat, who dropped off the call, is hosting game night Saturday, December 11th, coincidentally, the same day that some of the Dem clubs are holding a Christmas party. So this is kind of our holiday celebration. We'll see if the Dem clubs decide to include us in the other one. But in the meantime, game night is going to be a ton of fun. I'm going to make some cookies. So everybody should come. My cookies are going to be delicious. And then Monday, December 20th from 1 to 4 p.m., we're going to volunteer. And so Jake kindly took over where I dropped the ball last week and put in our application for the food bank, the Howard County Food Bank. So basically what will happen is, unlike the Maryland Food Bank, where you might work a conveyor belt and be loading up boxes for distribution to all of the various food banks, at the Howard County Food Bank, what you'll be doing is helping people find stuff when they come in to shop at the food bank. So that's what we would be volunteering to do. So those are our 3 outreach events, and I'm super excited about it. I think we got a lot of stuff going on in December, and hopefully, Jake, I didn't go through that too fast.
No, that was great. Thank you, Karen. And yeah, we'll send more specific, like if you're on our email list, you'll find Kat and Francis's address on there if you want to come to the game night. I didn't want to put it on the PowerPoint that was going to be public, but we're going to send out an email and post on social media an RSVP link if you want, the address to that, or we'll send the sign up sheet for the food bank stuff when that date comes closer. But yeah, we hope especially new people come by, give these events a chance. It's a good time, I think.
And bring a friend, right? Bring a friend. Bring your progressive friends.
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, we've got quite a few events. And also, Karen, I did not even realize, like, I knew that the Howard County Dem clubs came together to have their part. I didn't realize it was the same time and same day.
It's the same day, 2 to 4. I think I read on the invitation, and then when Kat suggested, why don't we just make this our holiday thing? Awesome suggestion. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a different time though. It's earlier.
Yeah, theirs is at 2 to 4. The game night starts at 7. So you could do both. If they decide to include us, we could do both.
Yeah. And yeah, I've got that on a slide in a second to see what the membership's thoughts on that, or at least people who are still here. But yeah, thank you. Those outreach events, you'll hear more about us as the dates come closer, but we want to put it on your radars. Yeah. Okay. So real quick, just to show, some of the things that the club does between meetings, we try to be active on local issues, rallies, current events in the community and bills. So one thing, there's this there's this minimum wage increase bill, but it's only a $1 increase. The wage is already on the path to be at $15 because of a state bill, and this county bill simply changes it from $15 to $16 and on a slightly more quicker timetable. And it keeps on being paraded as a living wage bill. And, anybody who knows a little bit about the cost of living in Howard County, or really just America in general, $16 is not really a living wage in most counties, let alone the third wealthiest county in the country. An actual living wage would be something like, I think like $21 and some change. And that I think is only,
I think it's closer to 24, Jake.
yeah, 24. And that might even be just for like a single person living by themselves. So, that was our testament as we testify, we'll never be against raising wages for working people, but this thing is not a living wage bill. And this is a tiny footstep in the right direction. And I tried to get across in the verbal testimony that this is not something that should be celebrated and like, champion like they're working class heroes. Cause this is, at least in my eyes, was kind of the definition of giving people breadcrumbs, and then acting like you gave them the whole loaf. So that video of that testimony is out there somewhere. We haven't clipped it out and uploaded it. Maybe we'll get around to doing that. We also published a statement in support of LGBTQ solidarity in response to a lot of the recent events. And Karen, basically drafted that statement for the most part. So thank you, Karen, for doing that. And then we also hosted webinars on APFO, which is Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, which ties right into this zoning and land use stuff. APFO is basically regulations at the county level that make it so that if infrastructure doesn't exist to accommodate new population, you can't develop more stuff until you've built. If the schools are at 120%, you can't add more people to that until you've built another school so that that district's only at 105% capacity, that sort of thing, to catch up infrastructure to development. And it's somewhat complex. So there's a webinar by Brent Lovelace from PTAC to explain the ins and outs of that. I believe we emailed at least one of those out to our list, but maybe we'll share again. But super good if you're trying to get informed on the zoning and land use stuff. These webinars are a good, foot in the door. As Harry brought up earlier, and as we voted on at our last meeting, we submitted a complaint against Councilmember Christiana Rigby's attempted use of the publicly matched citizen election fund system, because at least in my eyes, she's not supposed to be able to participate because she's accepted over $5,000 of contributions that are supposed to be not allowed. And that includes, business and LLC contributions, PAC contributions from individuals over $250 this current election cycle. She's taken $5,000 worth of all of those different types of donations. So at least by my reading of the rule, she's not supposed to be able to participate, because that kind of defeats the purpose of making people choose one or the other. Why would you choose one or the other if you could do both? So it stands to set a very dangerous precedent. So we submitted the complaint originally, both to the County Citizens Election Fund Commission and to the State Board of Elections. The County Citizens Election Fund responded, basically saying they don't have the power to rule over this until Christiana Rigby becomes certified as a CEF candidate by the State Board of Elections. So basically we sent it to the County CEF Commission before they were able to make a decision. So they dismissed it on their end, but the State Board of Elections, who we also sent it to, did not dismiss it and still has to rule on that when Christiana Rigby eventually does reach her needed number of qualifying contributions. But we just actually sent a part 2, or I sent a part 2 to the complaint last night, and Scott E. covered it this morning, though I would say he miscovered it, because he just reported that the first complaint got dismissed, which is only partially true, because again, only the County CEF Commission dismissed it. The State Board of Elections, who actually gets to make the decision, did not dismiss it. So, I don't think Scott intentionally got that wrong, but he did kind of get it wrong on accident. But, the first complaint only covered business and LLC contributions she received, which there was over $3,000 worth. Whereas this second complaint just covered her PAC contributions and contributions from individuals over $250, which total, again, there's over $5,000 worth. So 2 complaints to cover different aspects of the same issue. I'm very curious to see how the State Board of Elections rules on this. Whether they allow her to participate and essentially create a loophole, or whether they rule with us. And then we've basically just kind of saved the day for not just our county CEF, but every single county CEF, because this loophole would not be allowed if they rule with us. So we will keep people in the loop of how that goes. We also have a podcast. I think I mentioned that at the beginning. We uploaded an episode on the county council redistricting that got approved, and Ken Stevens, who I don't think is on the call anymore, new member Ken Stevens, he was a guest. Francis was a guest who is on the call, and Scott E from Scott E's blog. And I think we're probably likely going to do a new episode about this rally today against State's Attorney Rich Gibson. And I think I have something on the next slide about that. And I promise this is the last slide, this next one. So 3 upcoming things that I want to talk about. One is the thing that just happened today, and that is the protest against Howard County State's Attorney Rich Gibson for his complicity in covering up the investigation of Kwamina Akron's likely murder by Montgomery County undercover police officers. I could try to go more into detail, but I think there might be somebody on this call who knows a little bit more about this case. So Patrick, I don't know if you're there, if you wanted to, speak a little bit about the details of that case, and then also what your take on the rally today was, because Patrick was there, PDHC was there. But Patrick, if you're not available, that's okay too. Okay, I'm assuming he's not available right now, though he was around earlier. But Francis, what did you think? You were there.
Oh, there we go. It was a good rally. Would have been nice if there were more people there, but it was enough and loud. So I think they got their point across. The number of women who came up telling stories about their sons was disturbing. I just had not really. What's going on, but it's not just they got shot. It's that before that, the police had been after these kids, their entire lives, and it's just not, it's just not right.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. I lost connection. Can people hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I'm assuming maybe Francis or Patrick just spoke about the rally today.
Yeah.
Great. Hopefully we can do a podcast episode and try to put pressure on Rich Gibson in the future. But 2 quick votes I wanted us to potentially take is there's an LGBTQ solidarity rally this Saturday called the We Are the People rally, and it's sort of in response to a lot of this reactionary culture war bait stuff that this We the People 2 group is trying to push to, ban LGBTQ related curriculum, critical race theory, stuff like that. And so we did put out a statement in solidarity, but there is a rally being planned by PFLAG and Carrie and some other groups. And they reached out to us if we wanted to co-host and also potentially have a speaker. That the rally is this Saturday, December 4th at Lakefront from 11 to 1. I have 11 to 1 this Saturday. So I wanted to, I don't know if anybody wanted a motion to bring this to a vote, if we should officially co-host this and speak. But wanted to bring this up with the club, and we have to commit by tomorrow, but since just the timing worked out well.
Yeah, Jake, I have questions about this. So I think we should we should do it because we put out the statement. I think we should co-host. But I
Okay.
also think maybe we should speak. But I think we need to have like a coordinated statement. Like, I don't think it should just be a free form speaking, because I want it to be about how things like this, like, I'm sorry, I'm not saying it right, but the statement that Harry's working on, talking about the AstroTurf groups and how they distract us from other stuff. And when I watched the video of that meeting that they held, I believe it was in Elkridge, it was basically a political meeting. It was getting people riled up about things that really aren't hurting them, over other issues like what we're talking about tonight, developer issues, things where you can really make a difference. You're not just paying lip service to something. So if we're going to go, I think we should go and we should co-sponsor it. But I also think, and I know we haven't made the motion, but I also think if we're going to speak, we should comment on how this distracts from really bringing true equity to everyone.
Yeah, so you're saying we should focus on that in this, if we speak?
Yeah, because we made our statement, and in the statement, I specifically said how this keeps us from achieving true equity. So I think we can build on that.
Yeah.
I put that in there for a reason.
And that was that's where I was at too, was with what you just described. And like they focus on it, the picture's a little blurry.
And they do real harm. I mean, I think the reason I thought it was important that we make the statement is they do real harm to people. This does cause harm to people. And our group is fighting for equity. We are fighting for equity. We want people to have a say. And how resources are allocated to the citizens of Howard County, and making sure that people have fair representation, right? And so if we talk, that's how I want it to focus. Does that seem hopefully not too convoluted, what I just said?
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking. And like, one of these 4 bullet points of what this is supposed to be about is, it's a little blurry, but it says supporting equitable practices in school. So I think we definitely have a mandate to, harp on that point of it and relate it back to LGBTQ issues, of course. But Megan, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know we'll take a vote on this, but I definitely think this is a good idea. And if I don't know where we are with the statement that Karen's talking about, but it would really be great if we could you read the statement, or at least like synopsis of the statement, and just like Karen said, it's not hurting anybody. And bring attention to the fact that there are real issues, and not these AstroTurf things that they try to do all the time.
Yeah. And for the record, Huri's not here, but I think, I did talk to him about it before. I think he was a little bit hesitant because he thinks a lot of the people involved are doing it performatively. And I think that's probably the case too. But I just think if a rally is going to happen, whether we're there or participating or not, why shouldn't we try to be involved and, bring some substance to it if that is a concern.
We can, I mean, we can say that. We can say it. We're not I mean, well, I hope we're not. We're not performative. We want real issues resolved so that we get resources in schools. And I think Harry had some really good examples. But yeah, what Megan said, I think is right. Harry has a statement, which was that longer statement that we worked on. So I think probably that without the solidarity statement, talking about the AstroTurf nature of this and what it prevents us from doing.
Okay. Well, so is there any other further discussion before we raise it to a motion? Sounds like not. Okay. Well, I'm going to motion that we co-host this.
I second.
And have a speaker. We got a second from Karen. I think I was supposed to ask for discussion now, so I'll ask again. Any discussion? Okay, all members in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, all opposed, say nay. Okay, any abstentions? And I'm guessing Harry probably would have been a nay, but it would have just been one, so it would not have made a big difference. But and by the way, we're not live streaming anymore. When my thing crashed, the live stream stopped. So this is all private right now.
But we are recording.
Yeah, that's true. We are recording. We're gonna upload it. Not that we're saying the nuclear missile codes right now or anything. But okay, very last thing. This is a controversial one, but I wanted to bring it up for a vote. Maybe this meeting is not the best place. Maybe we should do it in chat or something because there's not a lot of us. But if the local Democratic clubs come back to us to our request, because we had requested originally, like, hey, you should include us in your holiday meetings, kind of knowing that they probably wouldn't want to, just because we stand for very different vision of what the party should be than them. And there's been some tension. So I think we kind of knew that they were gonna not want to invite us, but at the same time, it's like you guys are the ones that talk about unity all the time and like how much you need progressives and care about progressives. So like if you want to say progressives are part of the party, let progressives be a part of the party. Let us, host this holiday thing with and we sent that email probably in mid-October, never received a response, and now they have this plan. So I messaged Herb Smith from the Central Committee, and Steve Bolin from the Central, or I don't know, maybe it's just Linda, his wife, that's on it. But I messaged Herb Smith about it, and said because he was supposed to come to the meeting, so I was already talking to him, and I just said like, hey, that was not cool. I feel like we kind of got purposely left off of that, and I sent him the email, and he said, I think we just forgot about it. Maybe you're still welcome to come. I'm going to check with Shahan about it. So I don't know if he'll come back to me and they'll say, oh, hey, it was a missight on our part. You guys can co-host this thing with us, or what. But if that does happen, if they do come back and allow us to co-host, I want to know, is that something that we want? Is that something that the membership wants, is to co-host?
I think if we asked to co-host, if we said we wanted to be involved, and then they come back and say, oh, it was an oversight, then we should say, okay, great, we're in. What do you need from us? I mean, one of the things is that I know this from being on the Ellicott City and Western Howard Club, is that it costs money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that the Young Democrats, they never have any money. So I know that CDC and Ellicott City pretty much subsidize the whole thing for them. I know we have no money, but we definitely can volunteer to help set up, help clean up, all that kind of stuff. So if they come back and say, yeah, we definitely want you to come, I think we should say yes, but we should also be honest and say, we're poor. We should, you know what I'm saying?
How much is it for each? Do you know how much it was for each club?
I don't remember, Megan, but I could reach out to Rich and ask if he remembers.
Well, before we comment or speculate any further, Steve Bolin is here. Steve, I don't know if you're
Steve's on the call.
But Steve, I don't know if you have any insight of what happened there, whether it was a missight or or whether it was intentional that we were not included in that.
Yeah. So, hey, Jake, good evening. And so I just want to first say, very excellent meeting tonight. I'm sorry I got here late. I had some other things I needed to do, but very informative panel. I learned a lot, and I'm really happy I ended up showing up tonight. So let me
Steve, we're so glad you came.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So let me just make a couple of comments. So even though I'm also the vice president for the Ellicott City Club, I'm not part of this planning process. Okay, there's other people that are planning this, so I'm really not sure what invites went out and who has been invited or what. And my wife, she is on Central Committee. I'm not. She's not part of the party planning for Central Committee either. So I think if you've mentioned Herb, and I'm not sure if he's the guy on central committee, but if you know that he's the guy running it, he's the guy you should reach out to.
Okay.
From my personal point of view, I would have no problem inviting, any and all Democrats. We're all part of the big tent family here. And I would, if anybody contacts me and asks me my opinion about it, I would say certainly we should invite PDHC to our holiday event. I know that things did get discussed kind of late because it was on again, off again, whether we would have one, a consolidated one because of COVID and everything. So I don't know if, that kind of got into the mix with, not inviting you guys or dropping off. So I don't know, how that all got generated and how, and quite frankly too, I have no idea what the cost is either. Rich and our finance guy, our treasurer in my club would be the right guy to ask. But as far as I know, we haven't been approached with contributing any dollars on this yet. So maybe we will. And then
Now, Steve, I think that the clubs buy like the sodas and all that kind. Like if you want alcohol, it's BYOB. People bring dishes to share, or they have in the past. I don't know how that's going to work with a pandemic, but
yeah. So you might have more insight, Karen, because you've probably been with the club longer than me. But but so we'll probably get a bill, maybe like you said, for sodas. I just haven't seen anything like that yet. But and then the other comment about the young Democrats, of course, we all subsidize them because they're young people and we want to encourage them. So I don't have any problem with subsidizing them. But I would encourage, if you think Herb was the guy to reach out to, I would reach back out to him. Of course, Jake, you can reach out to James, Handley, the president of our group. I think he was the one working that from our end, and ask them if it's, what's up with all of that. But I do know, and it's not to apologize or make excuse, but I know that a lot of this stuff got planned late. It was an on again, off again stuff. So I don't know, that it is what it is right now. But like I said, from Stephen Boland's point of view, I wouldn't have a problem inviting you guys. I think, we're all Democrats. We all have points of view. And we're, it's a holiday party for crying out loud. We should all get along and put differences aside and meet each other and talk with each other.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that insight and honesty. And thank you for coming on the meeting. And I'm glad you found it interesting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't have as much insight maybe as I could, but I just was not plugged in with all of that stuff.
No, it's okay. I was the president of that Columbia Democratic Club. So I think at one point I did know the price. I want to say it was like $600 or something in that.
Oh my God.
You can tell how poor we are.
But I think Karen makes a good point, or whoever, it's not about the cost. I mean, if we want to make it happen, we can make it happen. If it's, volunteer effort, that kind of stuff, I'm sure, that seems workable to me. Come on, we should all just get along.
Yeah. As you say, it's the holidays, for crying out loud. But yeah, well, thank you. I guess we'll see, where that goes. But so with that extra insight now from Steve, is there more discussion? Do we want to take a vote on, if we accept this hypothetical invite or not? Which I think, what's the argument against accepting it, I guess would be my thing. So I don't know, does anyone feel passionate enough to make a motion?
I move that if they invite us, we should agree to co-host.
Okay. I will second that motion.
Well, you guys just one thing. I don't mean to interrupt your club, Jake, but you guys should just at least ask if you guys are invited to attend.
Yeah.
Or not,
Herb said we can do that. And for me, it's like, maybe I'm being petty about this, but like, I do view this as like a respect thing or like a principle thing, and especially that they didn't respond. Like the fact that they outright ignored they didn't say no, because there's too much drama. I hope you understand, they just to be ghosted. And again, I know you and Linda had nothing to do with that, so I'm not trying.
Well, fair point, Jake.
Well, Jake, but it wasn't just this, it was the Living Wage Coalition too.
No, but I have been, that's a different group of people, one, and I have been talking with Kelly Lee, maybe not as much as I would like, but we have been having some community. I didn't get completely ghosted there.
Okay.
Yeah. And like they gave really positive feedback about our living wage testimony, by the way, or at least Kelly Lee, the leader, did. And I told her the tone that we were going to strike before it, and she was supportive beforehand. She was supportive afterwards. But okay, so did we actually vote yet? I think we just did the motion.
We just did the motion.
Okay, so is there any other further discussion before we raise it to actual vote? Rick, did you take your thing off mute?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say aye.
Okay. All right. Well, all in support, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. No. Okay.
I didn't
All right.
vote. So wait, I didn't vote. So this is for the holiday party?
Yeah,
right?
whether we want to co-host if the offer is extended.
Just so
yeah,
everybody knows, it's December 11th, 2 to 4.
Yes, thank you.
I'm open to it. So yeah.
Is that an aye? It only counts if you say aye.
Yeah, aye, sorry.
No, it's okay. All right. Well, this was a long but productive. I hope people found it informative. Meaning, very last thing, Patrick messaged me. He is back now, so I don't know if Patrick wants to give a plug. He's new to the county. He could introduce himself and talk about his Party for Socialism and Liberation, which I was not super familiar with before today, and what his take on that rally is, or maybe how our group can help put pressure on Rich Gibson. If I called on you again and you're not around, Patrick, I feel bad.
Everybody, sorry about that. I was kind of busy.
No worries. Sorry.
Previous time, but yeah, I actually met Jake at the rally today. I had kind of connected with him on Facebook before, and have I know Rich as well from the Friends of Latin America, which is a anti-imperialist group that is based in Colombia. But the Kwamena Okran case, Kwamena was a Black man who was basically ambushed and chased by Gaithersburg police in January. He was shot and killed while running away. And the police, they claim that they were shooting in self-defense, that Kwam, which is kind of like what he was known by, his nickname, had shot at them, so they had to shoot back in self-defense. However, there's no evidence that actually happened. And Rich Gibson has, I don't know exactly like all the details, but he has been up to some kind of shady stuff to influence the grand jury into not seeking any charges against these officers, which is what happened. And that's why people were out there today to pressure him. I don't think, I guess he can change his mind or anything, but kind of bring attention to the case, bring like attention of it to, the Howard County community, and call on the state of Maryland government to kind of take action into this case. And there was like a wide variety of groups, like a large coalition of groups. I think it was pretty well attended, and it was like really loud, like the previous speaker was saying, commenting about the rally. And a lot of the groups are DC based or Montgomery County based. This happened in Gaithersburg. So there was the Silver Spring Justice Coalition, a group called Harriet's Wildest Dreams, which is a Black-led community organization, mostly like Black women. There was the Coalition for Concerned Mothers, who are the mothers of Black men and teenagers, really, who were murdered by the police in DC or Montgomery County. Jews United for Justice, CASA, the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, which is currently trying to defend the Bethesda African Cemetery from developers, I believe, too. So that is a major issue that's really going on in that area. There are so many groups, it's kind of hard to keep track of all of them, including, of course, my own, which was the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which is a national as well as like local socialist party in the United States. And I'm connected with the DC branch. I live in Columbia, though. I live in Howard County. I'm actually from Howard County, too. I'm from Elkridge. But it was just great to see such a wide variety and like diverse crowd uniting in this cause and sending a very clear and consistent message that we need to have justice for these Black men who've been murdered by the police, and put pressure on the judges and the prosecutors, who are the ones who are enabling the police to do this with impunity, and also just emphasizing that like this, it's really like the system. It's not like a few bad apples. It's the institution, the state institutions that are premised on this sort of this ideology and this behavior. And just I would say, to give a little bit more context, it was the PSL, the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Our Denver branch was leading the way for justice for Elijah McClain in Aurora, Colorado. And recently the police officers there that were responsible for his murder were arrested, but it took a very long and hard on the ground struggle there. And some of our organizers were actually arrested and facing political persecution and decades in prison for their protest activities. Luckily, they beat their charges. The charges were dropped, and finally there might be some semblance of justice for Elijah McClain. But yeah, I guess that's it for that.
Well, thank you, Patrick. And yeah, maybe we can pressure Rich Gibson help pressure Rich Gibson to reopen Kwamina's investigation. But even if that is, for all intents and purposes, a lost cause at this point, what I learned at the rally today is what I didn't know before, like 2 weeks ago, before this rally, is that Montgomery County and Howard County have this cross-county agreement where they review each other's police-involved lethal shootings and probably just give cover for each other's counties. But, so this Kwamina Akron thing, this wasn't just a one-time thing. We heard from a lot of mothers in the past who've experienced it, and also a mother who her son's name was Ryan LaRoe, I believe, and his case is being I don't know all the circumstances completely, but his mother was there as a speaker. His case is still being investigated by Rich Gibson. So even if we did sadly miss the window of opportunity for justice for Kwamina, certainly have not missed that opportunity for Ryan LaRoe and future victims. So I talked to both mothers and some of the organizers. Hopefully we can do a podcast episode and see what else our group can do on these fronts. And Patrick, one other thing, one thing that's cool about, or I think it's cool about our club, is that you do not actually have to be a registered Democrat to become like an official member. So even if you are a PSL register, that's not a barrier, at least in our club. But Joel or Kiana, I'm guessing Joel's comment was about something non-related, and yours, Kiana, was something about something related to this. So if you want to go first, Kiana, if it is related.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the meeting, I mentioned that to Jake and some of the others that I met Rich Gibson in person because there was a panel for Human Rights Day. Kind of ironic given what the US is known for, but anyway. So when I first met him, and again, before meeting, I saw the whole about justice for Kwama and petition, and I do remember seeing his name. At the time, it didn't quite click. And well, and it didn't come to my mind that I could have questioned him about that, of why he's not, of what the heck he's doing about this case and not taking it seriously and heck covering it up. But, well, I mean, it's kind of nagging at me now. It's like, man, I could have asked him, but, well, I have his email for one thing, but I'm not sure if I want to risk it.
Yeah,
It's the response. So
don't beat yourself up over it. You know, it had literally just happened. Like, you know, we had like no time to prepare. You had no advance notice. How long? So you were on the panel. I just found that out at the beginning of the call. How much notice did you have that you were going to be a speaker on the panel?
It was during the day. So I am a secretary. Okay, so I joined as PFLAG's secretary of their steering committee. Jamel was supposed to be on, but work came out unexpectedly, and he asked all the other members of the steering committee if they could attend. I was the only one available, so it's like, I can do it.
Yeah.
So,
well, again, no worries. Thank you for reporting back, because if you didn't do that, we would not have even known that he was on this panel for a very ironic thing that he probably should not be on a panel for. So if you weren't on that, we would not have been able to advertise that. And now all the organizations have shared that and, you know, shamed Rich Gibson and the Office of Human Rights and Equity. Thank you.
Well, when that recording releases on the 10th, I wonder how interesting it would be to do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 peanut gallery roasting on that.
That's a good idea.
Especially for Rich in particular.
Yeah, that's I had not thought of that one, but
I wonder what, and you can also put in comments about like your input, because there was the Department of Health, Dr. Rosen. I know her first name's Lauren. So
what, she was on the panel?
Yeah.
Well, we will be on the if you get that sent directly to you on the 10th, be sure to send that out to us, and we can think about what we want to do with that. But Joel's got one last comment. If people want to go now, you're welcome to. Don't feel trapped on the Zoom. Sorry it ran so long. But Joel, sorry, I know you've had your hand up.
My original comment was that in the last hour, the zoning board voted down Hickory Ridge for reasons I don't fully know how the approval unraveled at the end and precipitously. So let you and Megan people know that. I don't know anything about this shooting case, but I looked up this report and I get annoyed when you blame everybody as some conspiracy. This is a nearly 12-page single-spaced report of the timeline about the investigation, and that from October, so I don't know why we're protesting it now. The grand jury in Montgomery County found that it was justified on their own. Usually if a prosecutor wants to get an indictment, he can get an indictment, but it appears my quick reading of this is that he was using it to make the decision on whether it was a justified shooting rather than have him make the decision as he did in some of the other cases in Howard County. It did not involve police, where the guy came to the door and was drunk and got shot and killed. And Rich ruled that that was justified, and I don't recall anybody complaining about it. The agreement between the counties, not to cover things up, it was an improvement, and I thought that was included in some of the state law that was recently passed to keep the state's attorney from the county investigating the police that they have to deal with on a daily basis because they can't be impartial. So I don't know why you're poo-pooing their agreement, because I think every county should have it, or we need a special prosecutor. So I thought this was an improvement that Howard County and Montgomery trade their police involved shooting investigations.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably better than allowing them to investigate themselves, but clearly there's still problems with it and how it's being played. And I'm sure Francis has something on that too.
Yeah, that I agree that having a different county do the prosecution makes sense to avoid, conflict of interest. But the fact is, prosecutors have complete control over what they present to a grand jury. And if they don't want a case to go to trial, they can present the case in a way that the jury will say, no, there's no case here.
And did you read this report? Because it says basically if the grand jurors had questions, they were going to get them answered. They stepped out of the room. The prosecutors said.
I mean, or sorry, Francis.
Yeah, I did not read the report yet.
So
Okay, yeah.
So
just
you're
doing-
blaming the grand jurors who spent, I was trying to see how many days it says here. The grand jurors met on 3 different days with the prosecutors.
But let me just say, Joel, this was, at least me personally, this is a case I didn't know about more than 2 weeks ago. So I haven't had the time to look into every single thorough detail. But what I do know is that there's been a group or several organizations worth, and Patrick talked about many of them, who have been following this case for a very long time, very closely, much closely than I have, and been organizing, and are pretty certain that Rich Gibson had a heavy hand in, presenting it purposely a certain way. And probably me as an
That's the job of a prosecutor, is to present it the way they want to present it to a grand jury. That's how grand juries work.
I cite you back to Patrick's earlier comment of it's the system that is the problem. And I think we can leave it at that. I appreciate you, bringing
The
that up.
opposing system was apparently that he would make the decision on whether it was justified or not, but he deferred to the grand jury to decide.
Yeah, well, you're free to reach out to, some of the other organizers to relay your concerns who've been more involved than I or we have. But I appreciate your kind. I never want people to, feel afraid to raise a differing opinion on certain issues. So, okay, well, if there are no last I think probably everybody's, got their hand on their laptop, about to close it because it's been a long call. So thank you, everybody. Can we motion to adjourn? I motion to adjourn.
I second.
Second.
Okay.
Third.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All opposed?
Aye.
No. Okay, great. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody. Yep, good meeting.
Aye.